Chapter 1. The Battle of Thermopylae. Subchapter 1.1. The Setting of the Pass. The story of Thermopylae begins with the narrow pass itself, a natural gateway between mountains and sea. It was a place where armies could not spread wide, forcing them to meet face to face. The hot springs nearby gave it the name Thermopylae, the gates of heat. This location was chosen not for beauty, but for defense, as the Greeks knew their enemies' numbers would be vast. The Persian Empire, under King Xerxes, stretched endlessly, with soldiers drawn from many lands. Against them, the Greek alliance was small, fragile, and divided. Yet, here in the pass, numbers mattered less. For King Leonidas of Sparta and his men, the landscape itself became an ally, shaping their stand into legend. The pass was like a natural wall, where courage could hold back waves of men. Even the sea nearby whispered a warning, for it too could trap fleets against the coast. To stand at Thermopylae was to place oneself in a corridor of fate. History would not remember the quiet rocks or the steaming waters, but the moment when determination turned a narrow road into a symbol of resistance that would never fade. Subchapter 1.2. The Call of Duty. When Xerxes marched west with his mighty force, Greece trembled. City-states often quarreled, but now they faced a tide too large to resist alone. The call was made for unity, and though many hesitated, Sparta sent its king and chosen warriors. Leonidas brought only 300 Spartans, but they were supported by allies from other cities, forming a determined band. Their march to Thermopylae was not grand, but purposeful. They knew survival was unlikely, yet their duty was greater than themselves. Each man carried not only shield and spear, but also the weight of defending a way of life. To fall here, at the gates of Greece, would mean more than victory, or defeat it would mean honor. Stories tell of how Leonidas spoke calmly to his men, reminding them that glory was not in returning, but in standing firm. The people behind them, their families, and their cities, relied on this small group. Even as fear lingered in the air, the bond of shared duty gave strength. What might seem like sacrifice to others was to them a gift and offering of courage to their homeland. Subchapter 1.3. The Persian Tide. The Persian army was unlike anything the Greeks had seen. Vast and diverse, it was said to number in the hundreds of thousands, though stories often grew larger with time. Archers, cavalry, and soldiers from distant corners of the empire stood in Xerxes' ranks. They carried the wealth and might of Asia against the smaller, scattered Greek force. The sight alone must have shaken the defenders. Yet, in their hearts, they knew that courage could weigh as heavily as numbers. The Greeks trusted their discipline and the narrowness of the pass. Against a flood, a single stone can stand strong if the current is forced into a narrow stream. Here, the Persians would be tested. Some accounts say Xerxes expected the Greeks to surrender upon seeing his numbers. Instead, he found defiance. The small Greek force was not blinded by the glitter of armor or the thunder of marching feet. They had chosen their ground well, and with every hour they delayed the Persian advance. They gave hope to Greece. Even the greatest tide meets resistance when the shore is unyielding. Subchapter 1.4. The First Clash. When the Persians advanced, they expected the Greeks to scatter. Instead, they found a wall of shields, steady and unyielding. The clash of bronze and iron echoed in the pass, and the narrow ground prevented the Persians from using their full strength. Again and again they pressed forward, but the Greeks held firm. Leonidas' warriors fought with discipline, each man guarding his comrade, each strike precise. The Persians were many, but they stumbled over each other in the confined space. For a moment, it seemed that courage and training might outmatch the greatest army of the age. The first day passed with the Greeks still standing. The ground was littered with the fallen, yet the spirit of the defenders did not waver. The air was thick with dust, the sound of shields meeting arrows like rain on stone. In the quiet hours after the clash, the Greeks rested lightly, knowing dawn would bring the same storm again. What mattered was not survival, but the knowledge that they had denied Xerxes what he most desired, an easy victory. Subchapter 1.5 Xerxes' Frustration. Xerxes watched from his throne, expecting victory to come swiftly. Instead, he saw his men falter. Each attempt to break through ended in loss, while the Greeks remained firm and disciplined. The Persian king, used to obedience from the world, found his patience tested by a few thousand men. He ordered his elite warriors, the Immortals, to advance. These soldiers were famed across the empire for their skill and loyalty. Yet even they found themselves trapped in the narrow walls of Thermopylae, unable to overwhelm their enemy. Xerxes realized that this battle would not be won with numbers alone. The Greeks had turned courage into a shield as strong as iron. For 2 days, the struggle continued, each charge repelled, each effort broken. The frustration grew heavier than the armor on the Persians' backs. Xerxes, who thought himself master of the world, faced a truth he could not ignore, that spirit and discipline could carve strength from weakness. In his heart, anger stirred, but so too did unease. The pass that should have opened easily was becoming a prison for his ambitions. Subchapter 1.6 The Betrayal of the Path. For all the strength of the Greeks, their stand could not last forever without weakness being found. The mountains above Thermopylae hid a narrow trail known only to locals. It was a secret road, one that could outflank the defenders. A man named Ephialtes revealed this path to the Persians, seeking reward and safety. His betrayal became one of the most infamous acts in Greek memory. Through the darkness, Persian soldiers marched along the hidden trail. Step by step, they climbed above the pass, moving silently to circle around. Below, the Greeks still fought bravely, unaware that danger was descending from behind. The fate of Thermopylae was sealed not by the clash of spears, but by the weakness of one man's loyalty. When Leonidas learned of the betrayal, he did not despair. Instead, he chose a final stand. He dismissed many of the allied troops, sparing them from certain death. With his Spartans and a handful of loyal Greeks, he prepared to face the full might of Persia. Their decision was not born of hopelessness, but of clarity. To remain was to transform defeat into timeless courage. Subchapter 1.7 The Last Stand. The morning came heavy with silence, broken only by the marching of Persian boots on both sides. Leonidas and his men knew the end was near. Yet, instead of fear, there was calm. They polished their shields, adjusted their armor, and stood tall in the narrow pass. The Persians closed in, pressing from front and rear. The Greeks fought with all they had, their spears splintering, their shields battered. When spears broke, they drew swords. When swords shattered, they fought with bare hands, teeth, and resolve. This was no longer about survival. It was about showing the world that courage does not bow to numbers. Leonidas fell in the struggle, his body becoming a symbol for his men. They fought over him, refusing to yield his corpse to the enemy. The last defenders stood together until none were left. The silence that followed was not defeat, but reverence. Their sacrifice was complete, their memory eternal, echoing softly in the mountain winds. Subchapter 1.8 The Persian Victory. Though the Persians broke through at last, their victory was costly. The narrow pass was littered with the fallen, both Greek and Persian alike. Xerxes gained the ground, but not the triumph he had imagined. His men carried scars of exhaustion and fear, proof that the smallest resistance could wound even the mightiest empire. The Greeks had delayed his advance, giving their homeland precious time. Xerxes moved forward, but his confidence was shaken. He had seen what disciplined courage could achieve. The immortals themselves had bled in the mountain pass, though history would call it a Persian victory. In spirit, it was something different. Thermopylae was not a place of conquest, but of remembrance. For centuries, storytellers would recall the defiance of the few against the many. Xerxes' triumph was written in numbers, but the Greeks' triumph was written in memory. Victory in body belonged to Persia, but victory in spirit belonged to Leonidas. Subchapter 1.9 The Legacy of Leonidas. Long after the dust of battle settled, the name of Leonidas remained. He became not just a Spartan king, but a symbol of resistance itself. His choice to stay, knowing death awaited, turned Thermopylae into legend. The world admired the calm courage that met overwhelming force with dignity. In Greek culture, the story was told to inspire unity. When divisions threatened to weaken the cities, they remembered the men who stood side by side in the narrow pass. The spirit of Thermopylae outlived the war, becoming a lesson for ages. That freedom often requires sacrifice, and that honor can shine even in defeat. The stone at the site carried the famous words, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie, simple, quiet, and eternal." It was a reminder that some victories cannot be measured in land, but in memory. A whisper across centuries, soothing in its steadiness. Subchapter 1.10 A Story for Sleep. The Battle of Thermopylae is often remembered in tales of fire and steel, yet it can also be heard as a gentle story before sleep. It is a story of courage, where the small stood against the great, and of sacrifice, where men gave their lives so others could live free. The details may fade in the quiet of night, but the message remains steady, like a lullaby of history. Imagine the narrow pass, the mountains silent under the stars. Imagine Leonidas standing calm, his warriors by his side, knowing their fate, yet choosing to remain. The clash of armies fades now into the distance, leaving only the soft echo of loyalty and honor. As the story closes, one can rest with the thought that even in the darkest hour, bravery can shine brighter than fear. Thermopylae reminds us that courage is timeless, and in sleep we carry its quiet strength. A battle long past becomes a gentle companion, leading the mind into dreams. Chapter 2 The Battle of Gaugamela. Subchapter 2.1 The March of Alexander. Alexander the Great, still young but already a legend, marched his army eastward across deserts and rivers. His goal was Persia, a vast empire ruled by King Darius III. Along the way, soldiers and followers witnessed the tireless energy of their leader. Alexander moved not only with strength, but with a calm precision, as if the land itself bent to his purpose. The army knew the coming challenge would be immense. Persia's forces stretched across plains that seemed endless under the hot sun. Yet there was a quiet determination in the Macedonians' steps. Each night, Campfires glimmered under the stars, and Alexander would walk among his men, speaking softly, sharing small tales to steady their hearts. He inspired confidence without boasting. The soldiers saw in him a steady hand and unyielding mind. This march, long and grueling, was also a lesson in patience. Even as the Persians gathered their forces, Alexander's army moved like a slow, deliberate tide, ready to meet the storm when the time was right. Their leaders whispered encouragement, the soldiers whispered songs, and the quiet night held the promise of something great. Subchapter 2.2 The Persian Array. On the plains of Gaugamela, the Persians prepared a vast formation. Chariots, cavalry, and infantry stretched across the horizon, their banners fluttering like a moving forest. Darius III, upon his golden throne, watched the battlefield, expecting to crush the Macedonian force with sheer numbers. The army's size was daunting, yet Alexander remained calm. He walked among his officers, adjusting strategy and observing terrain. He knew that cleverness could outweigh size. The Persians, confident in their empire's reach, underestimated the discipline of the Macedonians and the brilliance of their young leader. The sun warmed the ground, casting long shadows over the assembled armies. Each side measured the other, testing patience. The Macedonians felt a mix of awe and quiet fear, yet they trusted their leader. As they formed lines and adjusted positions, the soft rustle of armor and the low hum of conversation filled the air, a gentle prelude to the violence that would come. The calm before battle was filled with whispers of hope and steady breath. Subchapter 2.3 The Calm Before Battle. Before the first clash, a strange stillness settled over the plains. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, and the sun glinted off spear tips and shields. Alexander inspected his men quietly, offering words of reassurance. He encouraged them not with anger or command, but with steady calm. The soldiers understood that courage was their shield and focus their sword. The Persian army waited, shifting occasionally, as if sensing the tension. Alexander walked along the front, acknowledging each group, making them feel seen and part of something larger than themselves. Even as the mind anticipates chaos, the calm moment is sacred. The pause allows preparation, both of body and spirit. The Macedonians breathed slowly, feeling the earth beneath their feet, letting the rhythm of the plains ground them. Each breath connected them to the land, the moment, and the history they were about to shape. The quiet stretched, gentle and deep, like a lullaby before the storm. Subchapter 2.4 The Opening Moves. When the battle began, Alexander's forces advanced with precision. Cavalry flanked, infantry moved in disciplined lines, and the archers released their arrows with rhythmic accuracy. The Persian army surged forward, confident and mighty, yet the Macedonians met them steadily. The clash of metal and cry of men echoed across the plain, but Alexander remained composed, moving among his officers and guiding the action with subtle gestures. His strategy unfolded like a carefully composed story. Each move was deliberate, designed to confuse the Persian forces and exploit weaknesses. Even as chaos threatened, the Macedonians found balance. Their training, trust in their leader, and calm determination allowed them to withstand the first waves. The ground trembled under the mass of horses and men, yet the Macedonians pressed forward, turning fear into rhythm, panic into focus. The sun reflected off steel and dust, painting the scene with a strange, quiet beauty amid the chaos. Subchapter 2.5 Darius' Response. Darius III saw his lines faltering. The Macedonians, though outnumbered, advanced with clarity and purpose. The Persian king urged his chariots and cavalry forward, attempting to envelop Alexander's forces. Yet the young general anticipated each maneuver. From his vantage, Alexander seemed everywhere at once, directing, inspiring, correcting. The Persian soldiers grew uncertain, sensing that sheer numbers might not secure victory. Darius realized that his empire's power could not replace discipline and courage. Despite the tension, the plains held a strange beauty, the sun glinting off armor, the wind moving through thousands of banners, the rhythmic stamping of horses' hooves. Even in war, there is a quiet, a breath that steadies the heart. Alexander's brilliance lay in knowing that moment, in turning the tide not by force alone, but by focus, patience, and calm command. Soldiers whispered to one another, finding courage in small gestures and quiet solidarity as the world seemed to hold its breath. Subchapter 2.6 The Macedonian Flank. Alexander understood that victory was shaped by movement, not mere numbers. His cavalry shifted carefully along the flanks, flowing like water around obstacles, each horse and rider in quiet harmony. The soldiers felt the calm authority of their leader, steadying hearts and sharpening focus. From a distance, Persian generals watched confidently, assuming size alone would ensure success. Yet Alexander observed subtle weaknesses, faint gaps, and slight hesitation among enemy ranks. The Macedonian line advanced steadily across the plains, hooves kicking up fine dust that floated in lazy swirls. Sunlight caught armor and weaponry, creating flashes that moved rhythmically, like a silent signal across the field. The Persian front wavered slightly, sensing the calm momentum that carried the Macedonians forward. Even small gestures between soldiers reinforced unity. A glance, a nod, a shift in formation. Alexander's strategy unfolded gradually, almost imperceptibly, yet the effect was unmistakable. The flank advanced with precision, deliberate yet unstoppable, demonstrating that careful planning and quiet courage could bend even the greatest force to one's will. The rhythm of hooves, shields, and spears created a pattern that was both practical and strangely beautiful, a silent harmony within the chaos of war. Subchapter 2.7 The Charge of the Companion Cavalry. The Companion Cavalry, Alexander's elite unit, prepared to strike with a fluid, measured rhythm. Their horses' hooves pounded in unison, and lances leveled in silent intent. Despite the looming danger, there was a strange serenity in the way they moved, a calm that mirrored the confidence of their leader. Alexander rode at the front, composed, his gaze sweeping the field. He communicated with subtle gestures and quiet nods, ensuring the soldiers remained focused. Each rider felt his presence like a heartbeat, steadying nerves and bolstering courage. When the charge began, it was controlled, yet forceful. Cavalry broke through confusion, carving openings for the infantry to advance. Dust rose in slow spirals, banners fluttered gently, and each movement blended precision with power. The companion cavalry acted in harmony, creating momentum that rippled across the battlefield. The soldiers whispered encouragement, observing subtle cues from one another. Every advance was deliberate, measured, and infused with calm strength. Even the enemy felt the effect, uncertainty spreading like a soft wave. The charge, though violent in action, carried an elegance born of preparation, trust, and quiet determination. The battlefield itself seemed to bend to the rhythm of discipline, turning potential chaos into a dance of strategy and courage. Subchapter 2.8 The Turning Point. The battle unfolded with relentless energy, yet Alexander maintained his composure. Darius III observed anxiously as Macedonians, though outnumbered, pressed forward with patience and clarity. Each movement exploited the Persians' weaknesses, gradually transforming the tide. The Macedonian infantry and cavalry blended seamlessly, forming adaptive lines that countered the enemy's maneuvers. Every strike was measured, every step deliberate. Terrain features, small rises and gentle slopes, were used strategically, providing cover or creating advantageous angles for attacks. Soldiers moved as one, their awareness of the larger plan anchoring every action. Sunlight reflected softly off shields and armor. Dust spiraled in lazy clouds, and the rhythm of hooves and footsteps created a strange sense of order amidst chaos. Courage became tangible, a shared pulse across the ranks. The turning point came not with thunder or shout, but with subtle shifts in position, careful flanking, and disciplined coordination. Alexander moved along the lines, watching, adjusting, guiding. Even as Persian forces faltered, the calm control of the Macedonians kept momentum balanced, ensuring victory would be achieved with precision rather than rashness. The battlefield seemed alive with quiet intent, a testament to strategy, discipline, and focus. Subchapter 2.9 Darius flees. As the Macedonian advance tightened, Darius sensed the collapse of his lines. The Persian army, though vast, faltered under disciplined assault. Slowly, the king began to retreat, moving among his troops in haste. Macedonians maintained formation, advancing steadily, pressing the advantage without panic. Dust drifted through the air, softening the harshness of retreat. Soldiers adjusted their gear, tended to horses, and offered quiet support to one another. Alexander walked along his ranks, observing, encouraging, and reinforcing focus. The men felt satisfaction in order and coordination, not in reckless slaughter. The Persian army's cohesion unraveled further. Even as enemies fled, the Macedonians continued with deliberate control. Small gestures of reassurance, careful management of formations, and disciplined movements ensured that victory was complete yet measured. The plains, once chaotic, now carried a soft rhythm, a sense of calm triumph grounded in strategy and unity. Subchapter 2.10 The Legacy of Gaugamela. Gaugamela would be remembered not only for victory but for strategy, calm leadership, and disciplined courage. Alexander's approach emphasized patience, foresight, and steady nerves. He achieved conquest not through brute force alone, but through precision and harmony. The Macedonian army moved as a single organism, every soldier attuned to the leader and each other. Dust rose softly, banners swayed, sunlight reflected off armor, and the battlefield became a living testament to planning, preparation, and quiet determination. Even centuries later, the story evokes the rhythm of advance, the coordination of men and horses, the disciplined execution that allowed a smaller force to overcome overwhelming numbers. Every movement of Alexander's forces reflected deliberate thought and confidence. Soldiers drew courage from their training, their comrades, and the steady presence of their leader. The plains whispered lessons of strategy and calm mastery. Victory came as a result of focus, clarity, and perseverance, a gentle yet powerful lesson echoing through history. Gaugamela remains a story of order in chaos, courage without panic, and leadership that transformed possibility into reality. Even now, one can imagine the sunlit plains, the steady advance of disciplined men, and the enduring lesson that careful preparation and quiet resolve shape the course of history. Subchapter 3.1: The Approach of Hannibal. Hannibal Barca, brilliant and patient, approached the Roman plains with careful strategy. His army, hardened by years of campaigning, moved silently along dusty roads and rolling hills. Soldiers felt a sense of quiet anticipation, each step measured, each unit alert. The air was heavy with expectation, yet calm settled among the men, a quiet trust in their leader's plan. Roman scouts reported the enemy's position, the vast numbers of Roman legions marching confidently toward their city. Hannibal, however, did not rush. He observed the terrain, noting gentle rises and depressions, imagining the battlefield as a living map, where every slope and hollow could be a tool or a trap. His troops adjusted their pace, shields and weapons ready, yet their movements were composed. Even in the face of potential danger, the Carthaginian soldiers trusted the rhythm of their training. Horses pawed at the earth, infantry shifted positions, and the occasional murmur of conversation moved like a soft current across the ranks. Hannibal walked among his officers, speaking in measured tones, offering guidance and listening to reports. His calm presence radiated confidence, preparing not just for the clash to come, but for the delicate choreography of tactics that could bend the mightiest army to his will. The plains awaited the subtle unfolding of strategy. Subchapter 3.2: The Roman legions assemble. The Roman legions gathered in disciplined formations, banners fluttering in the early sun. Centurions inspected shields and swords, while soldiers adjusted armor and shifted footing. Confidence was high, bolstered by the sheer size of their numbers, yet a quiet tension threaded through the lines. Hannibal's movements remained unseen, a ghostly advance that forced the Romans to anticipate the unexpected. The air seemed thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the occasional clang of metal or whispered command. Every man understood the gravity of the coming battle, and the training that had guided them for years now became the anchor for their resolve. Officers moved among the ranks, reinforcing discipline and steadiness. Soldiers breathed evenly, grounding themselves in the rhythm of shields and spears. The plains, wide and open, offered no hiding place. Every footstep could be felt, every movement observed. Yet the Romans, confident in their numbers, trusted the solidity of their formations. The tension grew gradually, like a rising tide, yet beneath it ran a calm current of preparation. Each soldier's gaze was steady, each hand on weapon firm. Even as the Carthaginian forces loomed in imagination, the legions held a composed readiness, a quiet promise of endurance and collective strength. Subchapter 3.3: Hannibal's Formation. Hannibal arranged his troops with subtle genius, a delicate balance between offense and deception. Infantry formed the center, lightly curved to invite Roman engagement. Cavalry spread along the flanks, disciplined and patient, waiting for the precise moment to strike. Every soldier moved as if part of a living mechanism, a slow, deliberate rhythm that mirrored Hannibal's mind. The Carthaginian elephants, though fewer in number, were positioned to inspire both awe and caution, their stillness creating tension on the plain. Dust rose in small, lazy spirals as troops adjusted stance and formation. Officers exchanged brief signals, hands lifted or lowered, conveying strategy without words. Hannibal's calm presence infused confidence. Soldiers felt the quiet certainty of preparation, the trust that each step had been thought through. Even in potential danger, there was an elegance to their motion. The gentle undulation of the lines, the soft shifting of spears and shields, created a rhythm that foreshadowed the coming storm, yet remained orderly, almost meditative. The Romans, watching from a distance, could sense the subtle cohesion, though they could not yet grasp the full scale of Hannibal's plan. The Carthaginian army seemed almost alive, moving in harmony with strategy and terrain, ready to convert patience into decisive action. Subchapter 3.4: The Calm Before Conflict. As morning deepened, the battlefield settled into quiet anticipation. Dust hung in lazy clouds, sunlight reflected off polished shields, and the gentle stir of wind carried murmurs from both armies. Hannibal walked the lines, observing, whispering guidance, his presence a steadying force. Soldiers breathed methodically, grounding themselves in the rhythm of movement and the feel of the earth beneath their feet. Centuries later, historians would recall this moment not as chaos, but as a prelude to precise orchestration. Each soldier felt connected to the whole, each step a part of a larger story unfolding in measured time. The Romans shifted slightly, adjusting stance, testing spear reach, glancing toward the unseen Carthaginian center. Even in tension, there was beauty in coordination, a quiet assurance that preparation and discipline could temper the fear of the unknown. Horses pawed the earth, shields scraped softly, and every breath seemed synchronized with the pulse of the battlefield itself. Time seemed to stretch in those moments, balancing suspense and resolve. Hannibal's calm shaped the tempo of expectation, converting anxiety into readiness. The plains held their breath, a gentle stage for the unfolding drama of strategy and courage. Subchapter 3.5: The First Clash. The battle began with measured precision rather than chaos. Hannibal's center engaged, inviting Roman pressure, while the cavalry flanks held, patient and controlled. Spears met shields in a rhythmic clash, dust rising and swirling around steady formations. Soldiers adjusted subtly to weight, angle, and rhythm. Horses responded to reins and commands with quiet obedience. Hannibal's plan relied on timing, not force, and every moment was a step in an unfolding pattern that turned apparent weakness into strength. The Roman legions pressed forward, confident yet unaware of the trap forming around them. Carthaginian infantry moved with soft coordination, absorbing blows, shifting lines, and maintaining cohesion. Even amid the noise and dust, there was a pulse, a gentle cadence that reflected experience, discipline, and anticipation. As the first skirmishes rippled across the plain, both armies felt the weight of strategy and expectation. Hannibal's calm guided action, each soldier part of a measured rhythm, a prelude to encirclement. The battle's opening was not violent chaos, but deliberate engagement, demonstrating that focus, patience, and quiet coordination often outweigh sheer numbers. Subchapter 3.6: The Double Envelopment begins. Hannibal's plan unfolded with quiet precision. As the Roman legions pressed into the Carthaginian center, the flanking cavalry slowly advanced, curving gently to envelop the enemy. Every movement was measured, deliberate, and almost imperceptible from a distance. Soldiers followed rehearsed rhythm, shields brushing lightly, spears angled just so, creating a living machine of discipline. The Roman front, confident in their superior numbers, pressed forward. Yet they did not notice the subtle narrowing of the Carthaginian center, designed to pull them inward. Dust rose in soft spirals, the sun glinting on armor, lending an almost dreamlike quality to the deadly choreography. Hannibal observed quietly, gesturing occasionally, ensuring the trap maintained perfect alignment. The flanking cavalry communicated through minimal signal stilts of the head, flicks of reins, small shifts in formation, each interpreted precisely by soldiers trained for such subtleties. The rhythm of the battlefield seemed almost musical, a gentle pulse beneath the tension of battle. Even the elephants, standing still but imposing, contributed to psychological pressure, their presence accentuating the controlled threat surrounding the Romans. Every Roman movement, every push forward, played directly into Hannibal's strategy. The encirclement advanced slowly, deliberately, with patience as a weapon more potent than haste. Subchapter 3.7 Rome Trapped. As the flanks of Hannibal's forces converged, the Roman army began to realize the danger too late. Confusion spread quietly at first, a ripple through ranks, unnoticed until it thickened. Roman soldiers, trained in rigid formations, found themselves gradually constrained, unable to move freely as the Carthaginian lines closed. Hannibal's troops remained calm, each aware of their part. Cavalry pushed softly from behind, infantry adjusted subtly to maintain pressure, and the center remained steady, absorbing attacks with minimal disruption. Dust hung thickly in the air, obscuring movement and heightening tension, yet the Carthaginian rhythm never faltered. The Roman commanders shouted orders, but the cacophony was drowned by the gentle coordination of Hannibal's plan. Soldiers felt themselves hemmed in, a slow tightening that turned strength into vulnerability. Even as panic whispered through some units, the Carthaginian presence reassured their own, reinforcing calm through practice and shared purpose. Every movement reinforced the encirclement, small adjustments creating a massive strategic advantage. The Romans' might, once overwhelming, was neutralized not through brute force, but through patient, deliberate orchestration. Hannibal's genius lay in this subtlety, turning the battlefield into a controlled stage where numbers became irrelevant, supplanted by focus, timing, and precision. Subchapter 3.8 The Crushing Center. With the Romans contained, Hannibal directed careful pressure toward their center. Infantry pressed gently but inexorably, spears angled to maintain distance and cohesion, shields shifting in synchrony. The Roman lines bent, not from panic, but from the unyielding subtlety of the Carthaginian design. Dust swirled around feet and hooves, a visual rhythm of tension and movement. Soldiers felt both fear and awe at the precision with which the trap operated. Even as strikes connected, there was a strange elegance to the flow of combat, a cadence that reflected control and patience. Hannibal moved among his officers, ensuring that the tightening lines remained coordinated and steady. The Romans struggled to push outward. Each attempt resisted not through chaotic force, but through strategic positioning. Slowly, methodically, the Carthaginian formation compressed the enemy, channeling them into spaces where every movement played into Hannibal's control. The center's gradual collapse reinforced the flanking encirclement. Soldiers felt their confidence grow quietly, as if drawn from an invisible rhythm that connected every unit. Even in violence, there was a lesson in calm precision, demonstrating that careful orchestration can overpower raw strength without haste or panic. Subchapter 3.9 The Final Phase. The Romans, now fully surrounded, faced a tightening noose. The Carthaginian cavalry pressed from all sides, infantry maintaining steady pressure, and Hannibal's elephants lent silent intimidation. Every soldier understood the delicate balance between control and force, the rhythm of advance measured with care. Panic spread quietly among the Roman ranks as options dwindled. Even seasoned commanders struggled to coordinate, hindered by the seamless encirclement that Hannibal had orchestrated with patience and skill. Dust mingled with sweat and the soft noise of metal, creating a sensory haze that masked the precise, disciplined movements of Carthaginian troops. Hannibal's calm ensured no unit overextended, no soldier acted impulsively. Small gestures, subtle signals, and careful positioning guided each action. The battlefield became a living puzzle, pieces sliding into place without chaos, yet impossibly effective. The Roman strength, once imposing, was neutralized gradually, almost silently, through coordination and foresight. Every tightening movement brought the Carthaginians closer to full control. The success achieved not by brute force, but by patience, timing, and unyielding focus. Subchapter 3.10 Aftermath and Reflection. When the dust finally settled, the scale of Hannibal's victory was clear. Roman forces had been crushed, not solely by numbers or courage, but by careful orchestration and patient execution. The Carthaginians moved among the fallen, tending to their own and ensuring cohesion remained intact, the army still a living organism despite the ordeal. Hannibal walked the battlefield quietly, observing, noting the effectiveness of each maneuver. Soldiers felt pride, calm, satisfaction, and respect for the disciplined plan that had achieved such success. The plains themselves seemed to exhale, dust settling into a soft haze, sunlight glinting on the remnants of combat, a gentle reminder of order emerging from tension. Even centuries later, historians would recount Cannae not simply as slaughter, but as a masterclass in strategy, patience, and quiet leadership. The lesson endured. Focus, discipline, and calm orchestration can overcome overwhelming odds. Every soldier, every movement, every small decision had contributed to an elegant, devastating conclusion. The battle remained a story of deliberate planning, subtle timing, and courageous execution. Hannibal's calm presence and methodical strategy transformed fear into confidence, chaos into rhythm, and numbers into controlled art, a testament to the enduring power of intelligence and patience in warfare. Subchapter 4.1 The March to Agincourt. King Henry V's army trudged wearily across the fields of northern France. Rain had softened the ground, turning paths into slippery stretches of mud that clung to boots and the hooves of horses. Soldiers adjusted heavy shields and carried weapons that pressed against their shoulders. Despite exhaustion, a quiet determination flowed through the ranks. Every step, every shuffle in the mud reinforced the rhythm of perseverance, a subtle pulse binding the men together in a shared purpose. Archers checked their longbows with meticulous care, ensuring strings were taut, arrows straight, and quivers securely fastened. Horses shifted uneasily, nostrils flaring as they sniffed the damp air, mirroring the calm anticipation of their riders. Henry moved slowly along the ranks, offering brief words of encouragement and silent approval, his presence grounding the soldiers' spirits. The mist that clung to hedgerows and trees softened the landscape, giving the march an almost meditative quality, each step a preparation for the battle ahead. The sounds of distant birds, muted by fog, mixed with the squelching of mud beneath boots. The men whispered, adjusted straps, and shifted shields, small gestures that created a quiet harmony. Even fatigue was tempered by focus. Soldiers drew courage from the rhythm of movement, the steady presence of their king, and the knowledge that discipline and patience could carry them through the coming ordeal. The plains awaited, silent and expectant, as the army pressed forward. Subchapter 4.2. French forces assemble. Across the fields, the French army gathered with impressive bulk. Knights mounted on massive horses glimmered under muted sunlight, armor reflecting fleeting rays. Infantry formed tight formations, adjusting shields and aligning weapons with precise gestures. The sheer size of the army conveyed confidence, yet subtle tension was visible. Commanders barked orders in clipped tones, and messengers scurried to convey instructions. The terrain itself was soaked, horses sinking slightly with every step, dust and mud combined, creating muted clouds that partially obscured distant movements. Soldiers exchanged wary glances, conscious that maintaining formation in such conditions would be critical. Even the mounted knights paused periodically, balancing weight, adjusting reins, and gauging the narrowness of the terrain ahead. Trees and hedgerows framed the battlefield, creating a constriction that would shape engagement. Commanders reinforced readiness with minimal gestures, subtly instilling a rhythm of coordination across the army. Every breath, every movement, every adjustment of armor contributed to the steady pulse of preparation. The French force, vast as it was, remained fragile under conditions where discipline and patience could dictate outcomes. Soldiers felt the quiet tension, aware that numerical advantage alone would not guarantee success. Subchapter 4.3. The archers take position. English longbowmen moved with careful deliberation along the narrow fields. Wooden stakes were planted at measured intervals, angled to deter cavalry charges. Each archer adjusted stance, nocked an arrow, and aligned the bowstring with steady hands. The rhythmic sound of stakes striking the ground echoed faintly, blending with the occasional shifting of horses and the soft murmur of soldiers checking gear. Henry walked among the archers, eyes scanning for alignment, posture, and calm readiness. Subtle gestures, nods, brief instructions, the shift of a foot reinforced discipline. Even the muddy terrain contributed to focus. Every step had to be conscious, every adjustment precise. Dust swirled in slow eddies, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and leather, heightening senses while adding a quiet tension. The soldiers felt a collective rhythm, a pulse of preparation and anticipation. Arrows were aligned, bows flexed, and the cadence of silent expectation created a gentle harmony amid looming chaos. Despite the approaching French army, the English line exuded calm, precision, and confidence. Each bow drawn, each stake planted, each glance exchanged contributed to the controlled power of the smaller force, establishing a foundation for the coming engagement. Subchapter 4.4. The narrow battlefield. The terrain of Agincourt constrained the French, forcing their massive formations into narrow lanes between muddy fields and hedgerows. Henry's army exploited this naturally, allowing discipline and coordination to compensate for numerical disadvantage. Soldiers adjusted shields and weapons, moving with deliberate care to maintain spacing and balance. Every step, every gesture, reinforced a collective rhythm that shaped the battlefield before a single clash occurred. Henry moved quietly among his men, offering brief words of reassurance and scanning for any sign of misalignment. Archers checked stakes, Infantry aligned spears, and horses shifted patiently in the mud. The tension of anticipation mixed with the calm control of preparation, creating a subtle pulse throughout the English ranks. The French pressed forward, confident, yet hindered by the narrow terrain. Every movement magnified the impact of coordination, and small adjustments by English soldiers could shift outcomes dramatically. Dust rose lazily, sunlight reflected off polished armor, and hedgerows framed the confined space. Even amid growing tension, the rhythm of deliberate action reinforced unity, focus, and resilience, turning limitation into strategic advantage for the English army. Subchapter 4.5 The Clash begins. The first volleys of arrows cut the morning air in precise arcs. English archers released in coordinated rhythm, each shaft a small but potent instrument of strategy. Mud splashed beneath hooves and boots, horses strained against reins, and knights charged into slow, obstructed lines. Each soldier adjusted stance, absorbing the pressure while maintaining composure. Henry moved quietly along the ranks, scanning alignment, posture, and focus. The soundscape of the battlefield, a muted clash of metal, thud of hooves, and soft squelch of mud, formed a rhythmic pulse. Soldiers trusted this cadence, each movement deliberate, each response calculated. Discipline, preparation, and patience became weapons as potent as any lance or sword. The clash of infantry, the flight of arrows, and the constrained movement of cavalry created a controlled tempo. English forces, though outnumbered, absorbed momentum, maintained formation, and converted careful positioning into decisive advantage. Even amid the intensity of action, the calm rhythm of coordinated preparation dominated, proving that discipline and focus could triumph over numerical superiority. Subchapter 4.6 French Knights Stall. The French knights surged forward, yet the mud-soaked terrain slowed every step. Horses' hooves sank deep, armor weighed heavily, and lances strained in tense hands. The narrow lanes forced massive cavalry formations to compress, disrupting momentum. Even confident knights felt the frustration of limited space, their power constrained by environmental reality. English stakes blocked the path effectively. Archers adjusted aim with subtle shifts, each arrow released in precise timing, forming a rhythm that guided the battle. Infantry held shields upright, spears angled to intercept charges, creating layers of resistance. Every step, every repositioning of a soldier reinforced the methodical cadence that allowed a smaller force to counter overwhelming numbers. Henry moved quietly along the lines, offering brief instructions and calm reassurance. Soldiers responded instinctively, trusting discipline and shared focus. Mud-splashed hooves slipped, and the air carried the muted clatter of metal. Yet, despite chaos, the English line maintained harmony. Small adjustments multiplied into strategic advantage, demonstrating that patience, careful coordination, and subtle timing could overcome massed force. Even French confidence waned as each stalled charge reinforced the effectiveness of preparation over brute strength. Subchapter 4.7 Sustained Volley. The English archers released another wave of arrows, each shaft flying in controlled arcs. The rhythm of their volleys was almost musical, creating an invisible pressure that slowed French advances. Horses stumbled in mud, lances bent, and knights struggled to maintain formation as arrows struck with quiet precision. Soldiers coordinated movement with breathing, adjusting stance and shields to maintain balance. Infantry advanced slowly behind stakes, reinforcing protection and creating a steady wall. Dust rose in lazy spirals, mingling with the faint metallic scent of armor and the earthy aroma of wet soil. Every soldier's minor adjustment, foot placement, shield angle, or bow tension contributed to a collective pulse that dictated battlefield rhythm. Henry observed calmly, signaling minor corrections to archers and infantry. The cadence of movement, the quiet focus of men, and the environmental constraints amplified the English advantage. Momentum drained from the French, whose numbers could not compensate for discipline and timing. The sustained volley exemplified how preparation, rhythm, and patience allowed a smaller, focused force to dominate a numerically superior enemy, with each subtle action carrying strategic significance. Subchapter 4.8 Narrowing the Gap. The battlefield's narrowness intensified the effectiveness of English strategy. French troops funneled into limited space, compressing formations and making every step critical. Archers released precise volleys, infantry maintained strict alignment, and the rhythm of movement became decisive. Henry walked among his men, observing adjustments, reinforcing calm, and quietly encouraging focus. Soldiers shifted shields, adjusted spears, and repositioned in harmony with the subtle flow of the battle. Dust rose around them, sunlight glinting off armor and stakes, creating a visual rhythm alongside the tactical one. Every minor action amplified the impact of the whole, turning restriction into advantage. The French, despite overwhelming numbers, struggled. Cavalry charges slowed, infantry cohesion faltered, and the narrow ground magnified the precision of the English response. The rhythm of preparation and controlled movement dictated the flow of the conflict. Even minor adjustments created cumulative effects, demonstrating that focus, discipline, and deliberate action outweighed size and brute strength. The battlefield itself seemed to pulse with controlled, orchestrated tension. Subchapter 4.9 French lines collapse. French formations finally faltered under sustained pressure. Horses slipped in mud, knights lost balance, and infantry staggered as precise volleys and coordinated infantry resistance created gaps. The English line, steady and deliberate, exploited these openings. Archers reloaded with calm rhythm, infantry maintained defensive cohesion, and subtle positioning dictated outcomes. Henry moved quietly, noting weaknesses and guiding soldiers with understated gestures. Every minor action step, shield adjustment, arrow knocking, multiplied across the ranks. Dust hung in soft clouds, dampening noise, but preserving clarity of movement. The battlefield's rhythm shifted toward the English, illustrating how patience, discipline, and careful orchestration could neutralize massed force. French lines, once imposing, became chaotic under controlled pressure. Momentum drained, confusion spread, and the narrow terrain amplified these effects. The collapse was gradual, measured, and almost silent in its precision. Soldiers understood their roles, moved with intent, and transformed small, deliberate acts into cumulative advantage, highlighting the enduring power of coordination over raw numbers. Subchapter 4.10 Victory and Reflection. As combat subsided, the English force stood organized amid the aftermath. Soldiers tended to the wounded, collected arrows, and adjusted armor with care. Dust settled over stakes and mud, sunlight glinting softly on shields and weapons. The battlefield exhaled, tension giving way to quiet reflection and accomplishment. Henry walked slowly among his troops, observing, offering brief praise, and noting the effectiveness of preparation and discipline. Victory had been achieved not through numbers or haste, but through patient coordination, rhythm, and calculated action. Soldiers felt pride and calm satisfaction, understanding that focus and unity had shaped the outcome. Agincourt endured in history as a lesson in precision and patience. Terrain, timing, and disciplined execution proved more decisive than mass alone. Every archer, soldier, and officer contributed to a controlled harmony, their subtle, coordinated actions transforming potential chaos into organized triumph. The battlefield stood as a testament to courage, intelligence, and calm strategy, a moment of enduring legacy for generations to reflect upon. Subchapter 5.1: The Approach of Armies. The morning mist hung low over the rolling hills of southern England. William's Norman army advanced steadily toward the Anglo-Saxon positions, boots sinking into soft earth and the occasional splash of horse hooves echoing faintly. Soldiers adjusted armor, readied shields, and held spears with careful attention, each movement deliberate yet fluid. Across the ridge, King Harold's forces prepared to meet them. Anglo-Saxon infantry and housecarls shifted positions, shields interlocked, axes at the ready. The men were tense, yet disciplined, absorbing the rhythm of the terrain beneath their feet. Dust mixed with dew, forming a soft haze over the green fields. Norman knights observed silently, scanning the Anglo-Saxon lines, while archers checked their bows. William moved along the ranks, offering quiet words of guidance and reassurance. Horses shifted patiently, reflecting the soldiers' steady anticipation. The clash ahead was inevitable, yet there was a calm discipline, a quiet understanding that preparation and focus would determine the day's outcome. Every step of the advance, every adjustment of shield or bow, reinforced the measured rhythm that would carry both armies into history. The rolling hills, morning mist, and muted sunlight created a surreal atmosphere, softening tension while underscoring the weight of anticipation. Subchapter 5.2: Preparing the Shield Wall. Harold's soldiers formed the iconic shield wall along the ridge, a dense, interlocked formation. Each shield touched its neighbor, creating a solid barrier. The men adjusted grip and stance, ensuring no gaps, while leaders walked slowly along the line, offering calm reminders and observing posture. Archers moved behind the front line, readying bows and arrows. Infantry tested axes, shifting positions slightly, maintaining cohesion. The shield wall pulsed with quiet tension, a living organism poised to absorb and respond to the Norman advance. Soldiers exchanged brief nods, a silent acknowledgement of shared purpose. The terrain contributed to defense. The gentle slope allowed Harold's forces to observe approaching enemy movement while restricting cavalry charges. Mud clung to boots, horses pawed the soft earth, and distant birds called softly. Every sound, every shift of armor or shield, reinforced awareness. The men breathed slowly, coordinating internally with the rhythm of preparation. Even as Norman banners appeared on the horizon, the shield wall remained steady, a testament to training, focus, and quiet determination. Anticipation mingled with calm readiness, shaping a battlefield in which discipline could withstand the weight of numbers. Subchapter 5.3: The First Exchange. Norman archers released arrows in measured volleys, their shafts arching gracefully over the slope. Anglo-Saxon shields absorbed strikes with a dull thud. Dust and mud kicked up with each impact. The rhythm of combat had begun subtly, almost like a rehearsal, as each side gauged strength and response. William observed the shield wall carefully, noting openings and adjusting orders with minimal gestures. Cavalry and infantry held position, waiting for precise timing. Horses shifted cautiously, archers readied subsequent volleys, and infantry aligned spears behind the shield line. Anglo-Saxons gritted teeth as arrows struck, yet the shield wall remained intact. The subtle movements of soldiers shifting shields, adjusting stance, bracing feet, combined with quiet discipline to absorb the Norman pressure. Dust and faint metallic scent of armor mingled in the air, creating a sensory rhythm of tension and anticipation. Even amid the first exchange, focus prevailed. Soldiers drew confidence from preparation and shared purpose, each minor adjustment amplifying the effectiveness of the whole formation. The gentle cadence of the initial volleys underscored that patience, positioning, and calm assessment were as crucial as force in shaping the day's outcome. Subchapter 5.4 Cavalry Test the Lines. Norman cavalry cautiously advanced, probing the shield wall. Hooves sank in soft earth, armor clinked faintly, and lances were angled to test defenses. Each step required careful balance and precise coordination to avoid breaking formation or exhausting horses prematurely. Anglo-Saxons adjusted shields, braced against potential impact, and readied spears to intercept. The rhythm of disciplined movement dictated each response. Step forward, shift weight, brace, or strike. Dust rose slowly, mud squelched beneath boots, and a faint scent of damp earth and horse blended with metallic temps of armor. William signaled adjustments, subtle gestures guiding men to adapt formation without losing cohesion. Soldiers anticipated each maneuver, responding with quiet precision. The battlefield moved almost imperceptibly, a carefully choreographed interaction between probing attack and measured defense. The cavalry's advance revealed small openings, but the disciplined Anglo-Saxon shield wall absorbed pressure efficiently. Patience, timing, and cohesion dictated the ebb and flow, illustrating that disciplined rhythm and careful execution could counter even rapid, forceful movement. Subchapter 5.5 Tension builds. The morning wore on, and tension thickened like mist across the field. Archers on both sides continued volleys in a measured cadence, dust swirling around boots and hooves. The scent of earth, sweat, and steel mingled in the air. Soldiers shifted slightly, adjusting shields, aligning feet, and maintaining focus. Henry's and Harold's men alike felt the quiet pressure of anticipation. Each small movement, from drawing a bow to adjusting stance, amplified the larger strategic rhythm. Leaders moved slowly along lines, observing, signaling, and reinforcing discipline without panic or haste. The Normans adjusted infantry and cavalry positions in subtle waves, probing for weaknesses. Anglo-Saxons readied responses, interlocking shields more tightly, bracing spears, and preparing for concentrated attacks. Every minor gesture contributed to a collective pattern of preparation, a pulse that dictated the battlefield's tempo. The clash was imminent, yet the calm patience of both armies set a measured pace. Dust settled in clouds, sunlight highlighted polished armor, and the battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Soldiers' hearts raced quietly, yet minds remained focused, each aware that rhythm, preparation, and deliberate action would shape the coming conflict. Subchapter 5.6 The shield wall holds. The Anglo-Saxon shield wall held firm, each interlocked shield absorbing repeated impacts from Norman lances and axes. Soldiers shifted weight subtly, braced feet firmly, and adjusted shields with careful precision, creating a living barrier that responded organically to each advance. A quiet rhythm pulsed through the ranks, almost imperceptible, binding the men together in a shared heartbeat of resilience. Norman infantry probed cautiously. Horses pawed at the soft, muddy earth, slipping occasionally, their riders adjusting posture with precise movements to maintain balance. Dust rose gently, carrying the scent of damp soil, leather, and the faint metallic temps of armor. Archers released arrows in measured volleys, targeting gaps in the shield wall with calm focus. Each arrow, though small, contributed to a cumulative pressure that forced Norman forces to reconsider their approach. Harold moved slowly along the line, quietly reassuring soldiers, offering minor tactical corrections, and observing the subtle interplay of shields and spears. Men whispered brief words to neighbors, exchanging guidance and encouragement. Even amid exhaustion, calm determination persisted. The wall became more than a defensive structure, it became a living organism, translating patience, precise timing, and minor adjustments into amplified collective strength. Each soldier's focus, every subtle motion, multiplied across the formation, reinforcing cohesion and demonstrating that discipline and preparation could counter even overwhelming force. Subchapter 5.7 Norman Cavalry Intensifies. Norman cavalry pressed forward with renewed determination, testing the shield wall with coordinated thrusts. Hooves churned the muddy earth, sending up small splashes, armor glinting intermittently in patches of sunlight. Lances struck shields with dull, resonant impacts, each echo reinforcing tension across the field. Horses struggled to maintain footing, riders leaning subtly, adjusting weight, and bracing against unexpected slips. Anglo-Saxon soldiers responded with measured precision. Shields braced, spears angled defensively, and feet repositioned repeatedly to absorb shock. The battlefield moved with a subtle pulse: step, brace, strike, release. Dust swirled around boots and hooves, carrying the mixed scent of wet soil, sweat, and leather. Archers maintained steady volleys, targeting riders and horses to reduce the impact of charges, their rhythm creating an invisible but persistent pressure that shaped the battle's tempo. William issued subtle signals, coordinating adjustments with minimal gestures. Infantry shifted positions slightly, cavalry maintained cadence, and each minor motion contributed to the overall rhythm. Fatigue pressed upon both sides, yet focus and discipline persisted. The shield wall resisted repeated attacks, demonstrating how patient execution and coordinated movement could neutralize raw force. Every soldier's attention to detail, every deliberate adjustment, turned small actions into significant strategic advantages. Subchapter 5.8 Gaps and Opportunities. Repeated pressure gradually produced small gaps. Soldiers quickly adjusted, shifting shields and repositioning spears with deliberate precision to close openings. Archers modified aim, releasing arrows in steady arcs to reinforce weak points. Each small gesture carried strategic significance, a delicate balance between vulnerability and resilience. Normans probed cautiously, lances grazing shields, horses slipping slightly in mud. Dust rose in eddies, mingling with the metallic scent of weapons and the damp aroma of soil. Each subtle movement reinforced cohesion, turning apparent weaknesses into managed advantage. Soldiers whispered guidance, coordinated breathing with movement, and maintained focus despite fatigue. Harold observed intently, signaling reinforcements to vulnerable spots, ensuring every minor shift was synchronized with the rhythm of the whole formation. The battlefield's pulse was steady yet responsive. Tension and patience coexisted, even amid exhaustion. Disciplined timing transformed pressure into cumulative strength, highlighting the enduring importance of preparation and coordination. Soldiers absorbed the rhythm, each action multiplying into overall stability, demonstrating the quiet but powerful effect of united focus. Subchapter 5.9 Breaking Point. Norman pressure intensified, combining cavalry and infantry in repeated thrusts. Shields braced, spears angled precisely, and soldiers shifted subtly to absorb each strike. Mud clung heavily to boots, horses struggled for traction, and dust swirled around, carrying the metallic scent of armor and the earthy aroma of the battlefield. Yet the shield wall remained cohesive, responding organically to each maneuver. Archers continued precise volleys, targeting small openings and exposed horses. Infantry reinforced critical points, minor adjustments accumulating into a significant collective impact. Each foot placement, shield, shift, and spear thrust multiplied across the formation, dictating the battlefield's rhythm. The tempo of engagement ebbed and flowed, carefully controlled by focus, timing, and coordination rather than sheer force. Even as Normans sought to exploit openings, the shield wall absorbed pressure, closed gaps imperceptibly, and maintained cohesion. Patience became a tactical weapon. Each soldier's focus, deliberate movement, and calm resolve contributed to strategic outcomes. Discipline, rhythm, and unity transformed repeated assaults into cumulative strength, proving that deliberate, coordinated action outweighed numerical advantage in shaping the battlefield. Subchapter 5.10 Aftermath and Reflection. As combat subsided, silence settled over the ridge. Soft groans of the wounded and the distant clatter of abandoned equipment punctuated the quiet. Soldiers moved carefully among comrades, tending injuries, adjusting gear, and collecting spent arrows. Dust settled, sunlight reflected off polished shields and armor, and the battlefield exhaled a collective relief. Harold walked slowly, observing results, offering quiet praise, and reflecting on the value of discipline, rhythm, and preparation. Victory had not been absolute, yet the shield wall's resilience illustrated how cohesion and focus could shape outcomes against superior numbers. Soldiers felt pride tempered with exhaustion, each aware of the delicate balance between tension, patience, and execution. Hastings endured as a lesson in controlled strategy. Terrain, timing, and coordinated effort transformed chaos into structured advantage. Every soldier, archer, and officer contributed to a living rhythm, demonstrating that calm, deliberate action could rival numerical superiority. The battle's legacy persisted, a quiet testament to courage, intelligence, and disciplined orchestration, showing that unity and focus could determine the fate of history. Subchapter 6.1 Dawn at Cressy. The morning air was crisp over the rolling fields near Cressy, with mist clinging to gentle slopes, softening hedgerows and distant trees. English longbowmen assembled quietly, fingers brushing taut bowstrings, arrows meticulously inspected. Every motion was deliberate, contributing to a subtle rhythm that connected each soldier. Soldiers flexed knees, adjusted armor straps, and checked quivers, mentally preparing for what was to come. Some whispered short prayers, a soft breath of reassurance amidst rising tension, while others silently counted arrow shafts and tested bow tension, grounding themselves. French knights appeared in the distance, banners fluttering lightly, horses shifting nervously in damp soil. The metallic tang of armor mingled with earthy scents of wet grass and disturbed earth. Infantry adjusted grips on spears, shields locked in precise angles, and whispered encouragements to comrades. Calm focus spread through the ranks, anchoring tension and allowing anticipation to be measured rather than chaotic. Soldiers exchanged brief glances of trust, silently conveying readiness, determination, and shared resolve. King Edward moved along the line, offering quiet reassurances and tactical reminders. Subtle posture corrections were made, shields shifted, and foot placement adjusted. Birds called softly from distant trees, adding a serene contrast. Each soldier breathed deliberately, centering themselves as soft morning light reflected off polished armor. Minute details lining arrows, checking bow tension, straightening helmets samplified collective readiness, preparing men for the controlled storm to come. Subchapter 6.2 Preparing the Lines. English forces formed precise interlocking ranks. Longbowmen occupied slight rises, sightlines unobstructed, while infantry lined the front, shields pressed tightly together, feet planted firmly, knees flexed, stances calculated for maximum stability. The quiet cadence of preparation pulsed like a heartbeat, uniting men in shared discipline. Soldiers murmured quick adjustments to one another, coordinating small movements with steady breath. Each man felt the reassuring presence of his neighbor, the subtle weight of shields leaning together, forming a solid defensive rhythm. French knights advanced, confident yet constrained by uneven terrain. Gentle slopes slowed cavalry, and mud clung to boots and hooves, forcing careful adjustment. Dust and morning dew mingled with leather and faint sweat, filling the senses. Soldiers whispered reminders, correcting shield angles, repositioning spears, and adjusting foot placement. Subtle glances communicated readiness and reassurance, each man anchoring the next in calm focus. Edward moved slowly along the line, noting adjustments and offering nods of approval. Archers flexed fingers on bowstrings, scanning the horizon. Each minor movement reinforced the collective pulse of the army. Soldiers drew calm confidence, grounded in precise preparation, shared purpose, and quiet order. They felt connected, each action resonating across the formation, establishing a controlled rhythm that would guide the battle. Subchapter 6.3 The First Volley. French cavalry advanced cautiously, hooves sinking unevenly into soft ground. English archers released the first volley, arrows tracing graceful arcs toward the enemy. Shields clanged softly, dust rising in gentle clouds mingled with metallic scent. Soldiers adjusted foot placement with each recoil of bowstrings, inhaling deeply to steady focus, visualizing each arrow's path. Edward observed, signaling subtle adjustments with hand gestures. Soldiers shifted stance, repositioned shields, and readied additional arrows. Horses pawed the ground, nostrils flaring as tension thickened. Each small action drawing a bowstring, planting a foot, angling a shield multiplied across the formation, creating cumulative effect. Soldiers felt the rhythm of battle settle, patience and coordination turning tension into controlled resistance. The battlefield hummed with quiet discipline. Arrows slowed cavalry advances, infantry held steady, and dust mingled with metal and earth to create a rich sensory backdrop. Soldiers drew calm from the surrounding order, understanding that coordinated timing outweighed brute force. The first volley established a steady pulse of engagement, signaling that preparation and unity would define the outcome. Subchapter 6.4 Cavalry Clash. French knights charged with increasing intensity, hooves pounding uneven terrain, armor clinking loudly. Lances struck shields, reverberations running through the ranks. Dust swirled, mixing metallic scent with the earthy aroma of churned soil. Riders leaned, adjusting weight, balancing carefully to maintain formation despite uneven footing. Some muttered brief commands to fellow knights, a whisper lost in the larger cacophony. English soldiers braced shields, angling spears, adjusting stance to absorb impact. Archers released controlled volleys, aiming at horses to reduce momentum. Every movement followed a deliberate rhythm, translating tension into coordinated resistance. Soldiers whispered brief instructions, reinforcing collective awareness, correcting minor misalignments, and maintaining formation. Edward observed from behind the line, signaling corrections as infantry covered vulnerable points. Archers realigned aim, and cavalry subtly repositioned. Fatigue pressed on men, yet focus remained steady. The clash illustrated how preparation, patience, and precise discipline overcame brute force. Every deliberate action amplified defensive strength, turning pressure into effective resistance. Subchapter 6.5 Holding the Line. The battle settled into a measured rhythm of volleys and incremental advances. English soldiers maintained interlocked shields, longbows releasing arrows in calm, precise arcs. Dust rose slowly, carrying scents of mud, leather, and steel. Horses shifted cautiously, riders adjusting subtly to maintain balance. Soldiers felt the steady pulse of the battlefield, each small movement contributing to collective resilience. Edward moved along the line, observing adjustments, whispering encouragements, reinforcing subtle coordination. Soldiers synchronized gestures and breaths with steps, ensuring fatigue did not disrupt rhythm. Gaps were methodically covered, arrows timed to disrupt enemy momentum, spears angled defensively. Each deliberate motion contributed to cumulative strength. By evening, the line had endured repeated assaults, showing that patience, preparation, and coordinated execution transformed pressure into resilience and maintained tactical advantage over a formidable opponent. Soldiers exchanged relieved glances, acknowledging the power of focus, rhythm, and shared discipline that had carried them through the day. Their hearts, though tired, remained steady, each beat reinforcing unity and determination for the battles ahead. Subchapter 6.6 Reinforcements arrive. The morning had stretched into midday, and distant dust clouds signaled the arrival of reinforcements. English soldiers stiffened briefly, then allowed calm determination to settle over the ranks. Each man adjusted shield and stance, sensing both hope and renewed responsibility. Archers knocked fresh arrows, long bowstrings humming faintly as they flexed, ready to respond to renewed enemy pressure. French knights approached cautiously, noticing the shift in formation. Hooves churned mud, armor clinking in rhythmic cadence, a metallic song mingling with earthy scents of trampled grass and wet soil. Soldiers focused on measured movements, coordinating steps and arrow releases to maximize precision. Edward moved slowly among the ranks, whispering instructions, adjusting formations with subtle gestures, and observing both terrain and enemy movement. Gentle slopes beneath the archers became advantageous, allowing arrows to fly in sweeping arcs, while infantry braced to absorb impact. Every minor action carried weight. A shield slightly tilted, a step forward or backward, a whispered signal. These small, deliberate adjustments amplified the army's resilience. Soldiers felt a shared pulse of readiness, understanding that cohesion and coordination were more valuable than raw strength. Dust, sweat, and the metallic tang of armor combined to form a sensory landscape of tension and focus, binding men together in silent resolve. Subchapter 6.7 Midday Standoff. By midday, the battlefield had settled into a tense rhythm. Repeated volleys and cavalry charges left churned mud and scattered arrows. Soldiers felt fatigue pressing on muscles and joints, yet disciplined breathing, synchronized with movement, maintained steadiness. Archers replaced spent arrows, shields were adjusted, and infantry exchanged brief nods of reassurance. Edward surveyed the field with calm focus. His presence radiated quiet authority, guiding men through subtle corrections. French knights regrouped, cautious of traps laid by disciplined archers. Dust swirled in lazy clouds, carrying wet earth, leather, and faint sweat. The quiet murmur of coordination, whispers of encouragement, and occasional metallic clangs created a rhythm both tense and meditative. Every subtle movement mattered. Shields braced at the right angle, spears shifted to absorb impact, bowstrings drawn at the exact moment. Soldiers drew confidence from each other, sensing unity and the invisible rhythm connecting their actions. The standoff became a delicate dance of patience, timing, and careful observation, each motion contributing to collective stability. Men leaned slightly into one another's shields, silently exchanging strength and reassurance. Subchapter 6.8 Breaking the Momentum. A sudden charge by French cavalry threatened to break the English line. Ground shook under pounding hooves, dust rising sharply. Soldiers braced, shields interlocking, spears angled to absorb shock. Archers released arrows with precise timing, targeting horses to slow momentum. Each volley followed a measured cadence, amplifying defensive effect without chaos. Edward moved along the line, adjusting formations and whispering instructions. Soldiers responded seamlessly, movements sensing across ranks. Horses shifted uneasily, nostrils flaring, sensing tension in both riders and archers. Dust, sweat, and metallic temps of armor combined, forming a heavy, almost tangible atmosphere. Soldiers exchanged brief signals, reinforcing awareness and cohesion, each minor adjustment amplifying overall defense. The line held firm. Deliberate actions and precise timing reinforced resilience. Soldiers felt strength in shared rhythm, unity anchoring them against overwhelming force. Even as fatigue grew, focus persisted, translating tension into controlled resistance. Observing disciplined movements around them, men gained quiet confidence that preparation and coordination could sustain them. Gentle encouragements were whispered between soldiers, further stabilizing morale and ensuring that no man acted alone. Subchapter 6.9 Evening Approach. As evening shadows lengthened, the battlefield transformed. Light shifted, casting long silhouettes across mud-slicked slopes. Fatigue pressed harder, yet soldiers maintained posture and alertness. Archers flexed fingers on bowstrings, adjusting for changing light, while infantry kept shields aligned, ready to absorb further impact. Soldiers moved deliberately, aware of uneven terrain beneath boots and hooves, each step calculated to maintain balance. Edward moved along the line, whispering guidance, observing both terrain and troop cohesion. The French, aware of diminishing daylight, pressed with cautious intensity. Horses shifted, mud clinging stubbornly to hooves, dust mixed with sweat and metallic temps of armor filling the senses. Small gestures, nudges, eye contact, brief words maintained coordination, each soldier aware of his role in a larger rhythm. The battlefield moved in a quiet, meditative cadence. Each volley of arrows, each shield adjustment, each subtle repositioning reinforced cohesion. Soldiers drew strength from shared focus, understanding that vigilance, discipline, and timing could outweigh raw force even in the waning light. The subtle tension intertwined with deliberate movements created a rhythm that was both calming and empowering. Subchapter 6.10 Nightfall.com. Night approached and combat slowed, allowing a fragile calm to settle. Soldiers exhaled in collective relief, shields lowered slightly, bows resting in ready positions. Dust and smoke hung thick, carrying scents of mud, metal, and exertion. Horses shifted, breathing heavily, while archers cleaned bows and replaced arrows. Soldiers whispered soft words of encouragement to one another, reinforcing camaraderie and resilience. Edward walked the line, inspecting troops, offering quiet praise and reassurance. Soldiers exchanged brief nods, feeling reassurance of comradeship and shared achievement. Even with exhaustion, awareness remained, maintaining defensive readiness against potential last-minute assaults. Movements slowed but remained deliberate, each gesture synchronized, ensuring cohesion. By nightfall, the line remained unbroken. Patience, preparation, and precise coordination had maintained order amidst chaos. Men felt quiet pride, sensing that even under relentless pressure, unity, discipline, and shared focus could preserve both life and honor. The battlefield, though battered, became a testament to steady determination and the invisible rhythm binding soldier to soldier. Each man understood that together they could endure far more than individually, and that calm focus and patience could shape the outcome even in the harshest conditions of war. Subchapter 7.1 The Battle of Thermopylae. The narrow pass of Thermopylae was quiet under the early morning sun, with the scent of dew-soaked grass and limestone filling the air. Spartan soldiers adjusted bronze shields and tested the tension of their spears, each movement deliberate, reinforcing collective readiness. A subtle rhythm of preparation echoed along the lines. Footsteps on rock, shields clanging lightly, whispered encouragements to neighbors. Persian forces appeared in the distance, their banners fluttering faintly. The sound of distant drums mixed with the rhythmic clatter of armor on hooves. Spartans maintained formation, each man aware that the narrow terrain amplified both strength and vulnerability. Small gestures, a brief nod, a shift in stance, a repositioned spear ensured cohesion. Even the youngest soldiers drew calm from the shared discipline of their comrades. King Leonidas walked among the ranks, quietly observing, adjusting formations with subtle gestures, and whispering precise instructions. Each soldier breathed deliberately, centering himself as sunlight glinted off polished shields. The combined awareness, silent trust, and disciplined movements created a steady pulse across the narrow pass. The Spartans understood that their unity, patience, and tactical precision were crucial in the face of overwhelming numbers, and that each deliberate action contributed to the collective endurance that would define the battle. Subchapter 7.2 The Siege of Orleans. The Loire River glistened in morning light. French defenders, inspired by Joan of Arc, prepared for renewed assault. Soldiers checked bows, spears, and crossbows, coordinating movements carefully along the city walls. Even small adjustments mattered: shield angles, footing on uneven stone, or the positioning of archers along battlements. The English attackers advanced cautiously, aware of the city's fortifications. Muddy boots and splintering wooden siege devices clattered, while distant horn signals marked timing. French soldiers maintained calm focus, their movements deliberate. Whispered instructions and brief glances reinforced coordination, ensuring that each man's actions contributed to a defensive rhythm. Joan of Arc moved quietly along the walls, offering guidance and encouragement. Soldiers drew confidence from her presence, steadying breath and mind. Arrows launched in precise timing, spears angled to intercept advances, and every defensive action became part of a controlled cadence. The battlefield was alive with tension, yet structured by the discipline and awareness of those defending their city. Each soldier felt the invisible rhythm linking every movement, sustaining hope and resilience despite overwhelming odds. Subchapter 7.3: The Battle of Hastings. Rolling hills of Hastings were covered in early morning mist, and the scent of wet grass mixed with metallic temps from armor. English infantry formed shield walls, adjusting grips and stance with meticulous care. Small movements stepped forward, a shield repositioned, a nod to a comrade reinforced collective cohesion. The rhythm of preparation pulsed quietly through the ranks, each breath measured and controlled. Norman cavalry advanced across uneven ground, hooves thudding on damp soil. The sound of horn signals cut through misty silence, guiding maneuvers. Archers flexed fingers on bowstrings, releasing arrows with precise timing, while infantry held shields at calculated angles. Soldiers adjusted continuously, ensuring gaps were covered and lines remained unbroken. King Harold moved along the ranks, whispering instructions and observing minor shifts in formation. Each soldier synchronized movements with comrades, creating a deliberate cadence that governed the battlefield. Tension and awareness intertwined as arrows struck and spears braced. Soldiers felt unity in discipline, understanding that their coordinated actions could resist Norman advances. The battle's rhythm was both methodical and tense, shaping endurance and fostering calm focus amidst relentless pressure. Subchapter 7.4: The Battle of Agincourt. Morning fog lay over the muddy fields of Agincourt, the scent of wet earth thick and mingled with leather and metal. English longbowmen adjusted stance and nocked arrows, each movement slow and deliberate, reinforcing collective discipline. Infantry maintained spacing and shield alignment, prepared to absorb the impact of armored cavalry. French forces advanced, hooves splashing through mud, armor clinking, a rhythmic metallic song mingling with distant shouts. Soldiers focused on controlled breathing, small gestures, and precise coordination. Every step, adjustment, and glance contributed to the rhythm, holding the line together. King Henry moved calmly along the ranks, observing, adjusting, and offering subtle guidance. Arrows flew in synchronized arcs, spears braced at calculated angles, and every minor motion reinforced tactical stability. Soldiers drew strength from shared awareness and disciplined movement, understanding that cohesion, timing, and patience could offset numerical disadvantage. Each deliberate action built confidence, transforming tension into controlled resilience. Subchapter 7.5: The Battle of Waterloo. Fields near Waterloo were damp from early morning rain, the scent of wet soil and gunpowder permeating the air. Allied troops adjusted muskets and bayonets, coordinating movements carefully to maintain defensive lines. Horses shifted uneasily, riders balancing weight precisely to maintain formation on muddy terrain. Napoleon's forces advanced steadily, drums beating in rhythmic cadence, creating tension and anticipation. Soldiers inhaled deliberately, synchronizing posture and gestures. Minor corrections shield, angles, foot placement, weapon alignment amplified overall cohesion. The Duke of Wellington moved along the line, observing subtle shifts, whispering instructions, and reinforcing coordination. Artillery fired in measured intervals, soldiers braced against shock waves, and every small adjustment strengthened collective resilience. The battlefield moved in a controlled pulse, each man's awareness linked with the next. Soldiers drew calm confidence from shared rhythm, understanding that unity, patience, and precise execution could withstand even the most relentless assault. By sunset, the line endured, demonstrating the power of discipline, coordination, and focused endurance in shaping the outcome of one of history's most decisive engagements. Subchapter 7.6 The Battle of Stalingrad. The ruins of Stalingrad stretched endlessly beneath a gray, mist-laden morning sky, smoke curling from shattered buildings, carrying the acrid scent of burning wood, metal, and damp earth. Soldiers moved carefully through the debris-strewn streets, rifles ready, each step deliberate, every adjustment vital. Dust mixed with smoke and soot, filling the air with a heavy, almost tangible weight. Soldiers whispered to one another, coordinating movements, shifting footing across uneven terrain, testing barricades, and bracing corners. Small gestures, leaning a rifle slightly, adjusting a barricade, exchanging brief nods created cohesion and a sense of shared rhythm, a pulse of readiness that bound men together amid chaos. German troops advanced cautiously, boots crunching on shattered glass and rubble, armor clinking in a metallic cadence that echoed off ruined walls. Explosions shook the streets, sending clouds of dust into the air. Yet defenders maintained discipline, inhaling deliberately and synchronizing each action with comrades. Commanders moved carefully among the ranks, whispering instructions, adjusting positions, and observing micro-adjustments, ensuring coordination persisted even under intense pressure. The ruined terrain required constant attention. Rubble, collapsed walls, and narrow alleys became strategic considerations. Soldiers drew quiet strength from unity, every deliberate motion reinforcing collective resilience. Subchapter 7.7 The Siege of Constantinople. The Bosphorus shimmered beneath early morning light, the scent of salt water blending with smoke from siege engines and flaming projectiles. Archers tested bowstrings, infantry adjusted shields, and engineers fine-tuned catapults, pulleys, and gates. Every minor action, tilting a crossbow, securing ropes, positioning barrels of boiling oil, reinforced the collective rhythm of defense. Soldiers exchanged whispered instructions, their movements synchronized to maintain readiness. Ottoman forces advanced in measured cadence, drums echoing across open ground. The metallic clatter of armor and shields resonated through the city, blending with the distant hum of engines and shouted orders. Defenders moved carefully, timing volleys, adjusting positions, coordinating artillery fire. Every gesture reinforced cohesion, every small motion contributing to a collective pulse. Smoke and fire swirled into dense haze, yet soldiers drew focus from disciplined routines, knowing that coordinated, patient action was essential to survival. Engineers adjusted levers and ropes with precise timing, while archers and infantry synchronized their attacks, creating a continuous, deliberate rhythm that maintained both defense and morale. Subchapter 7.8 The Battle of Gettysburg. Rolling hills lay shrouded in morning fog, scent of wet grass mingling with gunpowder and lingering smoke from previous engagements. Union infantry braced behind hastily constructed barricades, adjusting muskets, aligning shields, and maintaining formation with precise care. Every movement, step, and adjustment reinforced the rhythm of collective defense. Soldiers whispered tactical observations to neighbors, exchanged brief nods of reassurance, and coordinated minor shifts in positioning. Confederate forces advanced steadily, drums marking cadence, bugles signaling precise maneuvers. Artillery fired in controlled intervals. Vibrations felt through the ground and echoed into the fog. Soldiers maintained measured breathing, synchronized actions, and alert focus. Small adjustments, stilting a rifle, stepping into cover, leaning against a barricade ensured cohesion, while commanders moved among ranks, offering whispered instructions and adjusting formation subtly. The battlefield's rhythm intertwined tension with focus, creating deliberate pacing that allowed endurance to persist amidst chaos. Even as fatigue pressed down, soldiers drew strength from shared discipline, maintaining coordinated defense that could withstand overwhelming pressure. Subchapter 7.9 The Battle of Midway. The vast Pacific shimmered under the morning sun, the scent of salt and fuel drifting across the decks of aircraft carriers. Sailors prepared meticulously, inspecting planes, loading weapons, and coordinating takeoff sequences. Every action, from tightening a bolt to calibrating instruments, contributed to a precise, synchronized rhythm. Pilots and crew maintained measured breathing, steady focus, and silent communication through brief gestures or radio signals. Japanese aircraft appeared as dark silhouettes against the horizon, engines humming softly. Sailors and pilots adjusted positioning, double-checked equipment, and synchronized actions, ensuring maximum efficiency. Every motion checking altimeters, securing harnesses, calibrating guns was deliberate, contributing to collective readiness. Commanders coordinated takeoffs, aircraft movements, and tactical positioning with quiet authority, whispering instructions, observing reactions, and ensuring every crew member was aligned. The rhythm of preparation, repetition, and trust created calm determination. Even amid tension and anticipation, shared discipline allowed each small action to amplify the collective pulse of readiness, enhancing survival and mission effectiveness. Subchapter 7.10 The Battle of Normandy. Morning mist hovered over the beaches of Normandy, the scent of wet sand, sea air, and gunpowder filling the atmosphere. Allied soldiers prepared to advance across obstacles and uneven terrain. Every step, every adjustment of a helmet, shield, or weapon reinforced unity and ensured precise coordination. Soldiers whispered encouragement, exchanged quick signals, and synchronized small movements, each contributing to a collective rhythm of advance. German defenders opened fire with deadly precision, bullets and shells striking with rhythmic regularity. Soldiers braced, inhaled deliberately, and moved in measured steps, each action reinforcing the line's cohesion. Small adjustments, leaning into cover, tilting a helmet, adjusting grip on a rifle were amplified by shared discipline. Commanders walked among the ranks, observing, correcting, and offering quiet reassurance. maintaining morale and coordination. Soldiers drew strength from the collective rhythm, understanding that patience, preparation, and unity were as crucial as raw courage. By evening, despite obstacles and fire, the line pressed forward, demonstrating endurance, tactical precision, and the invisible connection between every man, each deliberate action forming part of the larger, steady rhythm of survival and victory.